Is time management really the key to success? Or have we been chasing a myth all along? We have Julie here today, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, why this matters to her, and why it should matter to you. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Shauna. I'm excited to be here on Marketing Rebels today.
We are so happy
And
to have you.
great. So, a little bit about me. I'm a well-being specialist. I'm based in Minnesota, and this topic really interests me because I really enjoy good music. I enjoy a good podcast list, and work-life harmony is like having that perfect playlist for your life. It's a good mix of work and play. So, in my life, I have my master's in health, nutrition, exercise science, and MBA in leadership and change. And working through those periods of academic level of hours that you put in and trying to find harmony in the play and working as going to school, it really has helped me realize that I don't want to be controlled by the clock. And who does want to be controlled by a clock? So having that personal experience and then researching it as a well-being specialist has really enabled me to see what common myths are out there and wanting to dispel some of those myths. So if you don't find this topic important already, maybe I can introduce it to you in a new way. So work life harmony really enables you to have freedom to work on what it is that's important to you. It's freedom to focus on what really matters and getting stuff done. So, I hope to dispel some of those myths today, and hopefully, you can get away from feeling trapped by the clock.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness. Because really time is relative, and we all know that. We know that saying, and maybe we know the science behind that, but even Albert Einstein, he's the one who says time is relative, right?
Mhm.
To one person, 5 minutes passing could feel like a drain. 5 minutes, mom, come on. That's where we usually hear it, let's be honest. But then to another person, it's as quick as a blink. And then all of a sudden your kid's 18. My goodness, where the heck did the time go?
Mhm.
Right? And so I think it's really important, just circumstantially, as you can see, to take that very real experiential information and then apply it to your day to day, your lifestyle. Because I remember when we first met, Julie, you said you're a lifestyle entrepreneur. And I think that that's a really interesting concept that we can use to help explain our relationship with time in order to facilitate a life of freedom, a life on your own terms.
Absolutely. To piggyback off of that, when we think about the average lifespan, which it fluctuates, but it is about eight, 80 years. So it's about 4,000 weeks. Some of you may be familiar with Oliver Berkman's book, 4,000 Weeks. He talks about this concept of 4,000 weeks and how to make the most of those 4,000 weeks and what that means. And it really reminds me of a story that a friend told me. And she said, we were chatting about her weekend. She said that she had a gathering with a few friends and they hadn't seen each other in over a decade. And one of the friends shared, that at this rate, we only get together about once a decade. So I'm probably going to see all of you about 3 or 4 more times in my lifespan if
Oof.
we don't see each other more often. She was in her 50s. And that really got me thinking about how many life events that are really important to me that I put off for another day, another month, another year because I think there's just this abundance of time. But when I really think about how many holidays do I have left with certain people in my life, or how many chances or opportunities do I have to travel, or different things that are important to me, I really place that helps place a more of importance on what that looks like. And it's not to incite anxiety in your audience, but instead to incite a level of thoughtfulness and care in how you spend your time, and that will give you ultimate freedom.
Absolutely. Actually, so a theme that seems to be coming up a lot for me in my world and on the show here, is this concept of perspective, right?
Mm,
Perspective and intentionality. And I feel like that's what you're bringing to the notion of time, and this construct that we seem to keep pushing of time management, as though it is a pawn we can move on a
right.
chessboard. So how can we actually facilitate a life where we're dealing with time as it is, not as we wish it were?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And the first step, which is hard, and I've railed against it for years, is the thought that you can't outproduce time. You can't manage time, and just letting that go, even though it's hard to accept that because you think, oh, I can, once I kind of get a hold on the 10 tips to become more productive, then all my problems are going to be solved. But something that I noticed is, um, take any activity that you, so Shauna, you are really good at creating content for marketing. Now, once you get better and more efficient at creating content, do you create more content then, or do you take that time that you've saved to do something else?
That's a great question. To become more efficient, take that
Not
time.
to put you on the spot,
No,
but I
no,
kind of
that's a
am.
oh, I girl, listen, you've got me. Let's see. Both. So,
Yeah.
depending on where I'm at in my business, if I'm like,
Hmm.
I could take on another client and it wouldn't take up all that much more time because I've reduced
Sure.
the time of these in such a way that
Hmm.
this onboarded client would typically take this long, but because of my efficiency and my skill development, it's now taking this long. So whereas before I would have had this much time, I take on my client and it's only this. I would really like you just I would conceptualize time in blocks, which
Hmm.
may or may not be correct. So it would be
Yeah.
I would still split it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and you're not alone in that. So when people become more efficient, they just keep on adding tasks to then
Yeah.
fill the time, which could be, if it's done in a thoughtful manner like you are doing, that could be perfectly fine. Or you could say, this is the workload that I want for my life. When I become more efficient at it, I'm going to insert activity A, B, C, and D instead of increasing my workload because I've already been able to produce what I want to produce in just a shorter amount of time. So that's something for people to think about when, yes, become more efficient and be thoughtful about, um, what it is, the goal that you're chasing. Is it you become more efficient so you can create more work for yourself and take on more work for yourself, or are you becoming more efficient so then you can have more freedom at the end of the day?
Mm,
So it's just
right.
this thoughtful thing. And so I, within my different roles that I have, I'm an adjunct. I have this lifestyle business that I do. I work, for a regional healthcare organization, and within that, I have about 11 email inboxes that I manage. So I have become very efficient at email and
Wow.
managing that. And one thing that I have taken on with managing email is the less email that you send, the less email you receive. And so just
Fair.
thinking about, those little tips about how I manage my email inboxes very effectively, not so that I can send more email, but so that I can have freedom from that email at the end of the day.
That makes so much sense. And I mean, as an entrepreneur, you can see how this way of looking at time can either give you more creative freedom with your free time, or
Mhm,
can give you the opportunity to intentionally grow
mhm,
potentially in different ways, professionally and personally. So that's interesting. But also, from the 9 to 5 perspective, I just want to kind of touch there because I've seen a few interesting videos lately about how a person will get a job and they become very proficient at their job. And because they're proficient, they can finish their work earlier. But managerial people will give them more work for the same hourly rate. And it makes you wonder, like, this right there, that idea is why so many people will say nuts to this. I'm going to start my own business and control my time for that reason right there. So even just, and here's just another example of our experiences, our real life experiences with our level of being and our interactions with time.
Absolutely. And I would say for your example, if I've been in that situation, and then have a conversation with your manager and try to job craft to have those experiences. Say, yes, you've seen the skills, and how can we talk about compensation that recognizes what I'm contributing to this organization? Difficult conversation to have, but also necessary in order to prevent the burnout that could happen if you feel like you've been taken advantage of it in the workplace.
Absolutely. And to make you feel like you can actually own that time. Because I've also seen people who have been in that situation where they say, well, it needs to take me 8 hours. And so they
Mm,
make it take up that space. And I feel like that's something that's interesting too, is the idea that if you have an hour, it'll take you the hour to do the task. But if you only got 20 minutes, you can complete it in 20 minutes. So what are your takes on that with regards to time management, intentionality, and perspective?
right, right. So the first piece are, what are your behaviors related to time? So thinking about the behaviors related to time, some of it maybe it has to do with perfectionism. How if you're given an hour, you're going to work on it for an hour and keep tweaking and tweaking and refiguring, and whereas you're given 20 minutes, you have to give that product. So some of it you have to know your own tendencies about what that is. If you're a perfectionist, or like myself, a recovering perfectionist, you have to tell yourself, I'm going to allow myself this amount of critiquing, and then
Right.
progress towards an ultimate goal, and then I need to move on. Some of it is our distractions. So there's a lot of research out there about distractions, and we were just talking about on the call silencing our phones so we didn't get notifications, because we know they're going to come in this conversation, this amount of time that we have during this conversation. And some of it could be boredom, you distracting yourself because of boredom. You could have FOMO, which is fear of missing out, and and so you reach for that phone. Some of it, we reach for our phone if we're feeling discomfort. We don't want to acknowledge that person, look them in the eyes, and so we grab, something that makes us feel a little bit more comfortable. So all of those things, those self distractions, if you have 20 minutes, you might tell yourself, okay, I'm not going to let myself become distracted. But if you have an hour, you might say, oh, yeah, I can go and wander. I can look at this website. I can check that notification, because you feel like you have more time to work on the project. Um, then once the distraction happens, it takes on average about 20 to 25 minutes to get yourself back on task. So there are several tips to help with that when your attention is broken, of how to get back on task. An easier way to get back on task. But um, the main thing is yes, we are like a goldfish. Our time, we will expand to the size of the task that we're given, most of us.
Yes, and it's and I'm curious too then, when it comes to well-being, like what does that say for implications with regards to like procrastination and your mental and emotional and even physical well-being, doing things like that, doing those repetitive habits that could be sacrificing truly precious time, because if we're wasting the hour with what could have taken 20 minutes, that's three intervals of time that we
Right.
could be spending having tea with grandma or whatever that looks like. And so, like, I don't know, that just sounds like, what do I
Mhm.
do? Oh,
Right, right. So if you're looking at that hour and you notice that you are getting distracted, and all of us do, that is what happens. One thing that you can think about, there's this concept called mental residue, or attention residue. I didn't come up with this concept. So it's Dr. Leroy. She shares that attention residue, that comes into play anytime you switch from one task to another task. So it doesn't affect everyone equally, but for some of us, if we're doing something, we get interrupted, a coworker comes in, our child comes in, our dog needs us, so whatever it is that's happening, and
mhm.
then we're distracted, and then we have to come back to the other task. We have to think about, okay, what was I doing? what was my goal here? Where am I in the project? What was I trying to say in this email? Um, what what is the task that I even was working on? I don't even remember. So the goal would be to try to stick to that one task consistently, but
Mm.
we know that that's not realistic because interruptions happen.
We
We
live in real
and
life.
right, either someone else is distracting you or you're distracting yourself, one or the
Yeah.
other. It's either
Yeah.
one's going to happen. So then you need to think about before, if it's a self distraction, that's hard because it takes a little bit of self awareness. So you can ask yourself, um, when you notice yourself distracting, you can pull yourself back in and say, can I jot down whatever it is I wanted to look at and come to it later? So that would be a tip, but that takes a lot of self awareness to do that. But we tend to notice more distractions from other people. So let's say I come in, Sean, I come into your office and you're working on your working with a client and I just say, Shauna, can I just have a minute of your time? You can say, yep, 1 second, Julie. I just need to write down in this, where I am in this campaign. I'm going to write down also what the goal is that I want to accomplish. And I'm going to write down the time that I'm going to come back to this task so that I have time to finish it by the end of the day. Just give
Mm.
me a minute and I'll be right with you. And those 3 things of being intentional about noting where it is that you're stopping, acknowledging the other person so they know what you're doing, and then reminding yourself, I'm going to get back to it at the end of the day, and I need this much time to get back to this, lets the other person know that you have a boundary around the time that they then can spend with you because you have these other projects that you're working on and that are a priority as well. And it helps build that respect.
That's amazing. If if nobody just grappled with their desk to find a notepad and pencil to write that down, rewind. Of course, if anyone's joining us live, you can't rewind, but you can watch the replay, rewind, and write that down because that is gold. And
Mm,
that leads us to kind of the next topic that is, the construct of work-life harmony.
yeah,
The idea of being able to flow between your day-to-day and your very real obligations and responsibilities that come with having a job. Where do you sit in that conversation? How can one even entertain the idea that we can balance when we have so many moving pieces, especially as small business owners and entrepreneurs?
right, right. And the reason why I use the phrase work life harmony is because it is fluid, which if you're like me, you're a rigid person, you like discipline, you like structure, that fluid kind of makes me a little uncomfortable. It's a little ambiguous, and I'm not quite sure what to think about it, but it is the truth. Things ebb and flow. And the first thing is just to acknowledge that it's never going to be equal. It's never gonna be equal. You're never gonna be able to spend what time it is that you think you should be spending. But so you just need to have some self-compassion then and recognize that most people are doing the best that they can.
Mm.
So once you accept that it is a harmony, sometimes you're gonna be spending more time at work. Sometimes you're gonna be spending more time with the kids if you have children. Sometimes maybe you're a caregiver for an elderly parent or someone that's important in your life. It all depends on what that season is in your life and where you're going to be at that certain moment. And so practice some self-compassion with yourself and realize that go into the situation with love and care. And I know that's squishy, but it really is the truth. It really is the truth when it
It
comes
is.
to work life harmony, is first being aware that you can't be everything to everyone. So you need to let go of that and you need to show up authentically as you are in the situation. And it's not your job to make other people happy, but you can show up in a caring manner.
Yeah, absolutely. So really when it comes to that is just the first step is accepting that balance. It doesn't exist
Right.
in this world. It doesn't, because that's just like saying that perfection exists. You can't actually find the perfect 50-50. It's not going to happen. Not in
Hmm.
this place where we call reality, right? And so would that then be some of the first steps, just accepting that balance
Yeah.
doesn't exist,
Right.
that time is relative? Is that how we gain freedom from the clock? Like, or is
Mhm.
there some other construct that we should be considering as we navigate this space?
Yeah, that's those 2 points are an excellent first start. I always start so with Empower Possible, we have the 3 empowerments. The first empowerment is self and self-awareness, and then the second empowerment is social. So how do you turn into your social networks? First, you need to be aware of what could distract you, what is worthy of your time, and what you enjoy. So think about those things. And then the second, the social piece, are thinking about how others can support us. So again, as somebody, maybe you're somebody that wants to do it all of the time, and maybe it's time for you to let go of some of that. Maybe it won't be done exactly how you think it should be done or want it to be done, but maybe you can let go of some of those preconceived notions and delegate. We have people in our lives that want to help us. We have people in our lives that want to support us. They just don't know how. And so if you're vocal about that and say, "Hey, can you pick up the kids today?" Or, "Hey, do you mind walking the dog?" Or, "Hey, can you stop by grandma's?" Or, "Hey, can you cook dinner?" Or whatever it is for you that's going to help you in that situation. And know that it is about that harmony, and it is okay to delegate. It is okay to work out that system that um, maybe it means you're not in control of all of it all at the same time, but it
Which can
also
feel
can
scary.
be right, which can be scary because that
Mhm.
means it's not necessarily done exactly how I want it to be done. And if you want that freedom, this is part of that freedom. It's delegating those things. And maybe you start with something really small that you don't care that much about and then build up from there. Um, and it really delegating is a task that I know is not utilized as much as it should be with people that have a lot of responsibilities. It just isn't. And I work with leaders and I work with a lot of folks across sectors, and it isn't a skill. People don't know how to do it effectively, but you can work on it in small ways throughout the day of just small little tasks and then build up to bigger things.
Absolutely. And another thing that, again, I keep going back to my own grandmother. She'll say things like, yeah, let them do it. My white hair gets other people to do it. And you know what? She says, they feel good doing it.
Right.
And that's something that people forget. Doing
Hmm.
doing kindness for others, it feels good. So, I'm
Hmm.
not saying take advantage of everybody. I'm saying that
Right.
when it makes sense to delegate, to outsource, to accept an extended hand, know that
Hmm.
the person providing that probably feels really good about it. They're like, "I just did this. Did you see me?" It might be
Right.
internal more than external, but that
Right.
characterizes it, really.
Yeah,
That
absolutely. So part of my background is in positive psychology, and we talk about so there's random acts of kindness, but then we also talk about purposeful acts of kindness, like
Right.
acts of kindness with intention. And that the research it's pretty amazing how much it benefits not only the receiver but also the giver. And it is really motivating, and you'll notice that too once you accept a gift from someone, an act of kindness from someone, just watch their face and just watch their mood. And if it's something that's not burdensome to people, it can be overly helpful
Yeah,
sometimes. But if it comes from a genuine place, you'll notice that shift in energy, and you'll notice that you accepting that gift from them really helps make their day too.
absolutely. I can tell you every time I go to volunteer at the different places that
Mm,
I go to, every time I'm just like, it's funny because it's like I wouldn't think that moving boxes from here to there was a fun activity until I go and I'm doing it for somebody else. I'm just
right?
like, "Wow, hey, yeah, this is cool. No, don't worry about it." Or somebody starts
Yeah.
griping and you're like, "Hey, man, let's just dance as we go." And it just your outlook literally
Mhm.
changes about the task you're doing, the time you're taking to do it, and what reward you get at the end of it because it's usually pretty intrinsic. But if you're helping a friend move, it also might include pizza and beer. But I mean, each to their own.
Yeah.
That that said, we are coming to a close, so I want to invite you, Julie, to
Sure.
please share some final thoughts. Then, of course, tell people where they can reach out to you to have further discussions about how they can reclaim their time and embrace positive psychology to literally change their lives.
Yeah. I would say just some final tips with Time, you can't manage time. So, what you can do instead is manage your behavior. So, think about the behaviors that you're doing throughout the day. Are you delegating? Are you taking breaks? Research has shown that taking breaks is absolutely essential to work life harmony. And it actually makes work more enjoyable. And there's actually less errors throughout the day if you take little mini breaks. So, take a couple minutes here, a couple minutes in between meetings, a couple minutes in between emails throughout the day in strategic places, and you'll notice that those behaviors start to impact how you feel throughout your day. And just be willing to embrace and adjust plans as needed. Including a little bit of flexibility in how you approach your work and your life will avoid becoming too rigid, and that really can lead to anxiety when you feel like you're not going through exactly with the plan, and just being
Right.
flexible with that. Thinking about your time usage and just recognizing that you are not going to have enough time for everything that you feel like has to be done. So set those realistic goals, prioritize those tasks, and stay flexible. And by implementing these things, you're going to reduce stress and improve your quality of life, really. So I want to thank you for tuning in, and I would love for you to connect with me, and you can see the link to connect with me in the show notes. I'd love to hear about your work life harmony stories, or those times that you've had success in those time behaviors. And if you reach out, I'd love to share with you the 10 ways to manage an unwieldy email inbox. So please reach out and connect.
And you're the professional at that. We know that now because you've got 3 taken care of. And no, you said no, I thought, I'll tell you what I thought. You said you had 11, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
doing 11. In my mind, well, I didn't say this. In my mind, I said, I've only got 3. Jeez. So that's where I was going with that. So absolutely, I encourage all of you to reach out to Julie, if for nothing else, to tame your darn inbox. But then also, of course, because reclaiming that flow within the construct of time and life and the work that you need to do literally will change the way you live your life. Your shoulders start relaxing. You're feeling everything here. I always tell people, relax your forehead,
Mhm.
unclench your jaw, lower your shoulders. It's not that pressing. You're all right. We got this. Now with that, we're going to have more conversations like this and plus over the course of weeks on end. Listen, infinity. We're going to keep this going at least once a week. So make sure that you follow and subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode. With that, thank you again, Julie, for being on the show, and we will chat again soon.